Hello everyone, and welcome on board the Sunset Safari here in Djuma Private Game Reserve. I hope you all noticed that tiny little pearl-spotted owlet sitting in the tree. We got very lucky to find it this afternoon. It was some go-away birds that were actually alarm calling at an African harrier hawk that caused us to look back and spot the silhouettes of this little owl perched in a knobthorn tree. My name is Scott, and on camera this afternoon with me is Andrew. Brent has headed out on another vehicle, and he's teamed up with Brian this afternoon. They've headed off to follow up on the Nkuhuma pride, who are busy finishing off the remains of a buffalo kill that they made last night. So really exciting stuff happened. It was the first time that we managed to capture the Nkuhuma pride successfully hunting, and that's after being here for close on 8 months now. So it was a long time overdue, and glad we got to share it with some of you. For those of you who weren't there, sorry about that, but you got to keep tuned. It's a live safari, and if you want to be in on the action, you have to be with us when it's happening. Now, as I said, it is a live safari, so if you're watching for the first time, a very warm welcome. And just to let you know a little bit about what we do and how it works, as I said, there's Brent out on another vehicle, and we will chop and change between the two vehicles depending on what's going on and what action the various presenters will find. And also, we will answer your questions, so send them through to us, and your comments and thoughts to hashtag #SafariLive on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@WildEarthTV. Let's take a closer look at this little pearl-spotted owl. The sun has just popped out from behind some clouds, and it's partly overcast, probably 4 or 5/8 cloud cover this afternoon. So we can expect intermittent shady patches. And there's a little bit of a breeze, and you'll notice the branches of this knobthorn tree blowing gently in the wind. Despite it being the middle of winter, it's quite a warm afternoon. It's 23 degrees Celsius, which is about 74 degrees Fahrenheit. So very pleasant conditions, even though we are in the middle of our winter. Now watch closely. I know it is a little bit far away, but as it turns its head, and they can swivel them 180 degrees, it's got two false eyes on the back. So now it is facing us, but there we go. There you can see one of the false spots, and this is to give other animals the impression that it's always looking at them. So a useful marking to have eyes on the back of its head, and this will certainly aid in its defense against other predators that are larger than it. It in itself is a ferocious little predator, and I've actually seen one with a laughing dove kill before. That was in Zimbabwe, and a laughing dove is about the same size of this tiny little owlet. You'll also be interested to note that it doesn't appear to be asleep. It's wide awake, swiveling its head around from side to side, and it's not true that all owls will only operate at night time, and this is a perfect example. They will quite often hunt during the day, and the kill that I saw one make, well, I didn't actually see the physical takedown, but it was in the afternoon, perched up in a tree with its laughing dove kill. I'm tempted to try and get us a little bit closer to it. We've been sat with it for quite some time now, and let's take a gamble. Let's see if we can get you a closer look. They're such pretty birds. There is a chance it may fly off, but at least let's try and see what happens. Oh. No, we're not going to force it. It's already beginning to flutter through those leaves, so we'll just continue on rather than unnecessarily chasing it completely out of that tree, because if other birds spot it as it flies off, it's going to be attacked and mobbed by a series of little birds that will be wanting to give away its position. And it's kind of like a neighborhood watch system, you could say. Even animals that may not be predated on by that little owl will still let off an alarm call, because it's essentially the prey versus the predators out here. And we would hate to ruin its afternoon by alerting every little bird in this vicinity that it's around. Now, for those of you who were on the morning safari, you would have remembered seeing that large herd of buffalo on Arathusa, and I mentioned that it was going to be worth keeping an eye on the Arathusa waterhole as they were heading in that direction. And thanks very much for your updates that have been sent through confirming that they did in fact reach there, and I'm glad that some of you got to see those buffalo taking a drink. It would be interesting to know how many you thought were there, because in the very thick vegetation that we saw them in, it would have been very difficult to count them. So the plan for us this afternoon on this vehicle is to basically scratch around for anything interesting. I was across on Arathusa this morning. I don't think I'll go back there this afternoon, but there were some elephant tracks heading down this road kind of towards Twin Dams. They look quite fresh, certainly from between game drives. I could see that they were from between the drives because I noticed that their footprints were on top of the vehicle tracks, which is a good clue that they have been here after us. And tracking animals is an important way for us to try and find them. If we were to drive around permanently without trying to actually track down the animals, we wouldn't have much luck. So it's very important for us to actively follow the footprints of animal in order to find them. Well, I'm very happy that we've got a question through from Ginny, because I didn't give you an idea of how big that owl was, and it can be a little bit difficult for you to get an idea of size. So it's probably only about that big. It's a tiny little creature. There's also another one out here called the barred owlet, which is also the same size. So very, very small. The smallest that we get in Africa, or in this part of Africa at least. And that's why they've been called owlets, for their miniature size. They've got a beautiful call that you quite often hear on our safaris. Is my impersonation. I'm sure it could be fine-tuned, but you've got the gist of it. And if you ever hear that now, you will know it is the little pearl-spotted owlet responsible for that call. Hard to confuse with anything else, however, sometimes there are only little brief portions of that call, and that's the case with a lot of bird calls. It may not always be the exact same noise, and there can be slight variations thereof, or remixes, you could say, that can be a little bit confusing. So I'm not sure where these elephants have gone. Their tracks veered off the road, but Andrew and myself are going to continue working this area. We're probably going to stop and listen a lot this afternoon, and that will hopefully get some intelligence from the animals as to where exactly they're hiding. Either we could hear the elephants trumpeting, or who knows, possibly we could hear impala alarm calling at a leopard nearby. Anyway, while we wait here and listen, we're going to send you across to Brent for an update on his afternoon so far.
Welcome on this live safari, everyone. My name's Brent. I'm going to be your guide on this sunset safari. I've got Brian on camera, and we are actually on our way back towards the scene of all that pandemonium last sunset safari. And this is actually the area where those lionesses were moving through and going off and careering off those two main ones that jumped on that buffalo actually came through this little thicket we're driving through now. Well, not really a thicket, the sparse little bush off to our left, and went round and chased those buffaloes out of the crest in that terminalia woodland there, down towards us. We can actually smell the carcass from where we are now. Basically, the main smell I'm smelling is the smell of undigested grass, and I can just see the carcass. So I don't see any lions feeding on it. It's quite possible that they're all very fat and very flat, but we'll have a look now. And it doesn't look like any vultures have found the carcass yet. And they could be busy eating somewhere else. I can see a retired buffalo, but I cannot see a lion yet. Ah, there they are. Very flat cats. Well, this might give us a nice chance to actually have a good look at the carcass, see how much is left, try to figure out how much longer they're going to be here for. So I see some more lion bellies behind. So there are lions lying to the left of the carcass and to the right. You can see they've devoured a whole back leg since we were last here. So when we left this morning, the majority of the back left leg was still intact, and now it is a bone. Still a fair bit of meat on this carcass, not that much. They've done a very good job. Still the neck and forequarters and brisket to get to. And if we go up from the carcass, we can just see this grotesquely large belly behind, panting heavily with the heat caused by digesting. And then the rest are lying up in front. One's in front of me, and the others are off to the left. So, very little action. I'm just going to have another look around the other side of the carcass, and we can try to figure out how much longer these lions are going to stay on this buffalo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys some hints and explain, and I'm going to get you guys to guess how long you think the lions might stay on this buffalo carcass for. So we're going to go have a look at how much meat's left. We'll also try to have a look in the cavity, see if the flies have laid any eggs, if the maggots have started feeding on the carcass as well. That will obviously speed up the decomposition of the carcass. So really, really fascinating stuff. As you can see, quite a lot of the, let me just go a bit more forward there for you guys. Another window through here. There we go. So you can see there's still quite a lot of meat left. The whole forequarters and briskets. So let's have a look. So the whole neck's still intact, both front legs, and there will be quite a lot of, not the greatest amount of meat around the ribs and stuff, but I'm quite sure they will utilize it and eat it. Obviously, it all depends on whether the other predators challenge them for this, a large clan of hyenas, or if the male lions arrive and decide to start dominating the carcass. But how long do you think the lions, the Nkuhumas, we'll just keep it to just the Nkuhumas, would stay with that amount of meat left? And I would say there's probably 35 to 40% of the carcass left. And let's have a look. We're going to move around a little bit further, see if we can get a window into the buffalo, so to speak, and see if we can see if the flies have laid the eggs and the maggots have also started feeding on it. But on our way through, that is one large set of tummies and the two little sub-adult females here. Look at this guy using the little sickle bush as a pillow. So as we came in from a bit of a distance, and we stopped on those clearings, and we had a bit of a look before we drove in. And what we were doing is we were checking if there were possibly some hyenas around. And so this morning I only saw one, and it might be a while before sort of the grapevine or the hyena grapevine spreads to let the other hyenas know that there is quite a lot of meat here. And also, it's unlikely that the hyenas would make a play for them now during this time during the day, and especially just one single hyena around definitely will keep and keep tabs on it. But at the moment, no hyenas around. So we're going to cross across very quickly to Scotty, who's got something a little bit different from a fat and flat cat.
Welcome back, everyone, and this is the third attempt we've had at this specific little bird, hoping to share it with you, and I think we're gonna finally get lucky. And because this is a bird that we don't see very often, I want to open this one up to the floor, and you guys need to tell us what bird you think it is. Now, be quick, we're only going to send through the first couple of answers, and hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@WildEarth.tv. And this is going to be a definite extra bird, I'm fairly certain, for a lot of your bird lists. And for those of you who may be joining for the first time, it's quite popular amongst our viewers to get bird lists going, and that way keep track of all the different birds you see with us, and also how many you've seen in total. Well, we've just got the most awesome report from BJ in Pennsylvania, and BJ's let us know that his African grey parrot responded to the call of the pearl-spotted owl that I mimicked earlier on. So even people's pets are getting involved in Safari Live. How wonderful. Now quickly guys, get your answers through. We should have one already. And while we wait though, we'll just let Andrew zoom out and take you on a bit of a look around here to give you an idea of the surrounding scene. It's a beautiful open area that surrounds the the Twin Dams waterhole. It's an area where we've had countless memorable sightings. In the large tree to the bottom left of your screen, big dark green tree, we saw two of the Styx lioness chased two leopard, Mvula and Kwatile. They were busy mating, but their romance was interrupted by two lioness that chased them up that tree. And it was also in this area where we had our first sighting of the Styx lioness and their three tiny cubs. Well done. We've got the first correct answer through, and it's Anne with the purple roller. Very, very well done. And now Andrew can take you in for a closer look at the purple roller, so now you will all know who it is next time. And I believe a few of you were close with the European roller, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my book out, and that way be able to show you the differences between the European and the purple roller. One of the major clues would be that the European rollers are summer migrants, and they only come here during the summer months. So they already left probably around February. Okay, they're an incredibly beautiful family of birds, the lilac-breasted or the rollers, and take a look at all those colors. Now, the one that we see commonly at this time of the year is the lilac-breasted roller, and throughout the year. The European roller you can see over here, it's not nearly as dark as the purple roller that we're looking at now. And if Andrew just zooms down slowly, or pans down rather, you'll get to see the purple roller. So that should all make sense. It's got a clearly purple breast, heavily streaked chest, also with that green tinge on its wings. The broad-billed roller is one of my favorites, but we only get them up in the northern parts of the Kruger National Park. We are currently situated in the southern third, you could say. And now I'm going to task Andrew with something a little bit difficult, but he's ready for it. It's up in the sky, and it's going to be beautiful if we get there in time. I think we will. Andrew's all over it. Look at this. From one beautiful bird to another. This is a Bateleur eagle. We did get a brief glimpse of one this morning, but not nearly as well as this. And it's something that I'm so envious of, being able to float up in the sky without even beating their wings. The view from there must be incredible. Now, you'll notice as it turns towards us that it's got a black half and white half underneath its wings. There we go. So easy to remember that it's a male dressed in a suit, half black, half white. Oh, look at the roller in the foreground. This is too good. Well done, Andrew. That was incredible. Ah, the sun again. Now, bear in mind what he's doing. Pulling the focus like that may appear to be easy, but he's only making it look that way. It's not an easy thing that he's making happen here. As I was saying, though, that was a male Bateleur, and is it gone? No, it's still there. The female Bateleur would have an almost entirely white underwing with just a very thin black trailing edge. Now he's going for a go-away bird. When's it going to stop, Andrew? Now you're showing off. And you can see how that go-away bird lacks the ability of the Bateleur to soar effortlessly in the sky. An adaptation of a lot of the predatory birds. Whew. Well, that was awesome, and well done to Andrew on camera. I hope you all enjoyed that little bird party we've just shared with you. But back to the Lions with Brent. We'll see you all a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. You can see we're still busy with our visual dissection of a buffalo carcass, and we've been trying to look if we can see any fly eggs, and I can. Unfortunately, they're very small, and we can't really get an angle to show you, but we can see the flies buzzing around, and there's a couple of different species. A very prominent green and metallic fly there, which you find often around the carcasses. There we go. A little bit to the left there, Brian. See him there. And see it's a bit bigger than the other fly species. And you do find them around carcass quite a lot. And you'll actually notice, those of you who've been watching for a long time, that there seem to be actually very few flies here in comparison to some of the carcasses we've been around during the wet season. And that's obviously because of the cold, and a lot of the insects suffer, or don't suffer, they just don't breed as much during the dry season, and they will have a sort of a boom after the first rains. But I think maybe tomorrow we might start seeing some maggots, especially on the inside of the cavity. I'm quite sure there's a lot more eggs than we can see, and it'll be quite fascinating to get that. And inside the cavity there we can see quite a bit of congealed blood, and that almost becomes lumpy. And those two little subadults we were looking at earlier, from what their faces, they look like they might have been eating some of that congealed blood a little bit earlier. And I know we spoke about a little bit, if we go up to the left, right, just off the hip, the top ribs there, and you can see that the lions have actually managed to chew through some of those big ribs. Those are obviously a lot shorter, being quite close to the spine there, but they will attempt to chew even the other ribs, even though there isn't that much meat on them. And it all depends, obviously, if they are unmolested by hyenas and other lions at this carcass. So Rhea has probably got it closest, and she says probably 2 days. It might possibly extend to the third, but I don't think so. There are 8 individuals in this pride. I think another 2 days that they'll be static here. They might not move too very far once they're finished, but it is possible that they might stay a third day. I think more than likely 2 days. So, well done, Rhea. It's incredible. And one of the amazing things about being able to go on these safaris every day is we can actually watch the sort of deconstruction of a carcass like this. We were lucky enough to do it with the hippo, but this is sort of the more complete story because we've been with it since it was alive to now, and at the end when there's going to be very little meat and the scavengers might be around, it'll be quite an interesting thing to watch for a while. But that is one of the joys of being able to spend as much time in the bush as we do. I'm quite fascinated to see if we get any of those carrion beetles coming in during. I've been trying to remember whether I see carrion beetles during the winter months, but over the next few days, I'm sure we'll find out. Let's go have a look at some flat cats. Enough of looking at dead meat. And I know this sometimes can be quite difficult for you guys to witness, but this is nature, and this is what happens out here. And if this buffalo hadn't succumbed to the Nkuhuma's attempts, the Nkuhuma pride would have probably started getting into a lot of trouble. And obviously it is very sad to watch, but it is very exciting at the same time. And we must remember we are here to observe. And what an incredible experience it was to be able to watch that hunt from start to finish. And what a wonderful experience. And as I said, it is quite brutal, and they do start feeding on the animal when it's alive and give those bellows. But it is nature at its sort of most raw and its finest. And there was a couple of moments there where I thought the buffalo might get away when he managed to get the lioness off the throat, but she just managed to grip onto the nose. Now that is a fat cat, if I've ever seen a fat cat. Now that is a serious belly. I literally don't think that lioness on the right could put another morsel. think she's eaten more than Junior this time. There's old Junior. I mean, there's almost nowhere to put that belly. So since we've just left that buffalo carcass, Don from Georgia is asking, do we know how old that buffalo is? And Don, I would guess he's probably between 10 and 12 years old. Buffalo don't live much beyond sort of 14 or 15 in the wild, so he was an old buffalo bull, and he was within a group of about 20 buffalo bulls that the lions chased. On air we could only see about 3 or 4 running, apart from the one that got caught, but obviously me sitting right here I could see a little bit more, and there were about 20 of them in total. And one of the reasons those old bulls, once they've been pushed out of the breeding herds, form these bachelor groups is as a protection against lions. And sort of your odds are greatly decreased if there are 20 of you as opposed to 1 of you. So that unlucky sod had a 1 in 20 chance of being eaten, and just happened to be the unlucky buffalo on that day. So guys, I don't think these cats are going to move too much. It would be quite interesting to come back here much later in the safari and see if possibly the hyenas gather some masses, or if something else happens to come along. But for Don, we're just going to go back past the head of that buffalo, and I'll show you how I aged it. And you can have a look at its teeth. And teeth are quite a good indicator of age in quite a lot of animals out here. No trees behind me? So as we approach the remnants of this buffalo, we're going to just try get around her. And we've got a few more buffalo carcass related questions that we're going to get to shortly. And I'm just going to see where the best view is. Can you get to the teeth there, Brian? There we go, we'll have a quick look at the teeth, and then we'll move on to the hide and horn. So you can see those teeth are quite well worn, and there's quite a bit of decay, and starting to get a little bit smooth. So this is an old buffalo towards the end of his sort of reign on this earth. Definitely, his reign has ended. But you can see his teeth aren't in the best condition. That indicates quite an old animal, probably over 10 years. But to be more specific than that would be quite difficult. And then Dwarf would like to know what happens to the horn. And so the horn is keratin, which is the same as hair, which mammals are unable to digest. So there's a very specialized insect called a horn moth, and it is a type of moth that will lay larvae in the horns of an animal like a buffalo, and over time they'll actually break down that keratin, and then there will be very little left apart from the bone. And then even over time, with the exposure to the sun and elements, even the bone will break down and crumble and move back into the soil. And as we've seen quite often, buffalo bones are chewed quite regularly here by lots of different animals. We've seen giraffe, we've seen bushbuck and nyala, impala, all chewing various bits of buffalo for calcium, and as well as your rodents, squirrels, mice, gerbils, and even porcupines will chew on old bones to get that extra calcium that they need. The hide is a bit more complicated. Sometimes I have seen the lions will actually eat the hide if they really feel the need to. Most of the times it will some of it will rot, some of it will dry in this very dry at this time of the year. It will dry and become very hard, and then eventually, as well with the elements, will just sort of disappear. But hides can last and hang around for a couple of years after the animal has died. So looking at the hide, like there, we can see a buffalo, even though they don't look like the hairiest animal, there's quite a fair bit of hair on them. And just after the kill, we could see the lions regularly licking the hide, and we actually saw it a bit this morning as well. And what they're often doing there is they're licking to remove the hair, which makes it easier for them to use those molars and premolars as a cutting instrument to cut through there, so there's less to cut through. So they'll use their tongue to remove that hair so they can get in there with their molars and premolars to cut that really thick hide. And that is, Dennis from Massachusetts was wondering why they did that. So hopefully that helps explain that a bit, Dennis. So I think we're going to mosey on along, see what else we can find. Maybe go check some of the water holes. Maybe there's some ellies around, and maybe we'll get lucky with some leopard tracks. Only time will tell, and that's one of the most wonderful things about being out in the bush, that you never know what's going to be around the next corner. Sorry, just getting through here. While we disappear from the flat cuts and the remnants of that buffalo, I've got a question from Jeremy, who's a new viewer. Welcome, and I hope you're enjoying the live safari so far. Great to have you on the back of the vehicle. Jeremy would like to know, how long are those lions going to sleep for? Well, Jeremy, lions have an incredibly fast digestive system. So you'll probably find if we spent the full 3 hours here, during that time, a couple of the individuals would get up and start feeding, and when we come back later, they might very well be doing that. But one of the reasons they have this incredibly fast digestive system is to be able to take advantage of these type of situations. So they'll literally gorge, and they can eat sort of 20 kilograms of meat in a sitting, and they literally just eat as much as they can. And you saw the size of those bellies. And then probably within a couple of hours, they'll be able to not eat the same amount, but definitely able to eat sort of at least another couple of kilograms. And this is a sort of evolutionary adaptation to be able to make sure that, because quite often they do lose kills to male lions, to hyenas, so it's to try and ensure they get as much benefit from that kill as possible. So probably, I'd say after that big first initial, they'd probably sleep for a couple hours, and they would start feeding. Now they would sleep and continue to feed throughout the day. So I hope that helps, Jeremy, and welcome, and keep sending through questions. Hey guys, just got to get on there. game drive channel for a second. Very, very pretty little flycatcher. Here we go. Now, I know Scotty's been prepping you guys on your bird lists. That's probably one a lot of you guys don't have on your bird list yet. So, I know he's popped there, he popped up again. So, let's see if anyone can actually identify this. I'll give you the family because it is quite a difficult bird. So, it is a flycatcher. And remember to send your answers via email to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. Tax, I just left that Zingala open lock and no one responding. So I'm going to see if I can possibly call it out a little bit. There seems to be a nice little bird party in here. So I'm going to... They didn't really want to the last time. There we go, we've got some response. Oh no, don't fly away. Straight through at the back on that russet bush willow. There we go. One we have seen a few times before, but they are very mobile birds. Just see if we can get a window through here. So it looks like these guys are disappearing. So from one feathered friend to another, we're going to cross to Scotty quickly.
Well, it sounds like having some good luck with the birds this afternoon, and maybe it's because it's cooling down a bit with this overcast weather. The birds are less likely to fly off and they enjoy staying huddled up. A lot of them have got their feathers ruffled up, creating a thick blanketing effect or insulating effect over their body. And this is an interesting bird because even though it is a kingfisher, its name may be misleading, because it actually hunts insects, and the only time you'll see it at the water's edge will be when it's coming to drink. And it's the brown hooded kingfisher. So possibly yet another one to add to the bird list. We are driving through a beautiful, beautiful section of Djuma, and it's one of my favorite places to drive. You couldn't really call it a road because we are in the middle of a dried up riverbed. It will flow seasonally in the summer months, but now in our very dry winter, the only thing that is going to be flowing up and down this riverbed is us. And isn't it so wonderful? Actually, what's quite nice, and I'll show you now, is if you engage low range in this vehicle, you can actually drive the vehicle without any hands. So, sure. Because we're in the low range, the vehicle just follows the tracks and it drives itself. So it's quite a unique and fun way to get around from A to B. Look, no hands. And here we go on a little riverbed cruise. The sun's just poked out, and I know one of our viewers, oh, be careful. It works well until you see an animal. And it's a very pretty antelope just off to our right. So short-lived, but I hope you enjoyed that brief cruise, and I'm sure most of you will be happy that we ended it, because this is a male Inyala, And they really are such pretty antelopes. You'll notice little white ivory tips on the top of his horns, indicating that he's a male in his prime. And we actually saw a few others in the same riverbed just a few days ago, and it's that time of the year where the antelope, or a lot of them, will be mating. So what we will potentially see up ahead is some more Inyala, and maybe we'll see the Inyala doing their very strange ritualistic dominance display, where they slowly pronk, a slow motion kind of dance as they move forward with all the hairs on their back extended. We would need to have a few more of them around for him to display his dominance. There's a little gap. As Andrew zooms in, you'll notice that very prominent white chevron between his eyes. The females lack this. And you'll also notice how he's swiveling his ears backwards and forwards, all directions. On a windy afternoon like this, the prey species will be on high alert, because any rustle in the grass that they may hear that is brought up from the wind could possibly be a predator, so they're very cautious of that. They've also got these very distinctive creamy brown socks on the bottom parts of their legs, a spotted rump. He doesn't have as many vertical white stripes as they can have, and they're quite dull, but that could possibly be because he's a little bit older, and it is a tough time of the year, so he may not be looking as good as he could be, and therefore the stripes are not as prominent as they can be. Wonderful. Well, I think it's going to be a while before he decides to move out of that thick bush where he was evidently nibbling on some fallen down leaves. We did continue to have tracks of the same herd of elephant we were initially following, but they crossed the riverbed into a very, very thick and impenetrable block. Unwise to try and head in there after them, and it's because it's a very big block, it'll take them a while before they get to the nearest road, so we're going to have to go and look for something else, which is not a problem because there's lots and lots of different animals and also beautiful scenes that we like to show you out here. And even though you can get led into an area hoping to find one animal while searching for it, you very often bump into other interesting things along the way. That's important to remember, even though we may have goals for the drive to track down the bigger stars of the show or the harder to find animals like lion and leopard. It's not that we're going to overlook anything along the way. As Andrew's showing you, there's some wonderful big trees, some terrible driving. A lot of large evergreens. These are leadwoods you're looking at, line this riverbed. We've been searching in these trees in the hope that we may find a large owl called a Verreaux's eagle owl. Considering we started with such a small one earlier on, we were hoping to show you the biggest owl we get in this area, and we haven't had any luck, but we know that they do like to stay in these big trees in the riverbed, especially where we've just come from, where we've already driven through. There's a a pair that stay in that area, and some of you may remember a beautiful morning with James. They were vocalizing, and you got to see them and hear them calling at the same time. While we drive around in the afternoon, it's important not to assume that predators have not been moving. A lot of the time you will check the roads very carefully in the early morning, because that is typically when predators move. But on cool winter days like this, there's nothing stopping, especially leopard, moving during the course of the day. And I just saw some predator tracks coming down the road towards us, but there's some hyena tracks, so not worth following up on. And that's not because we don't like seeing hyena, but it's simply because they cover such large distances on a daily basis that it would be near impossible to track them down. It certainly is an option for later on this evening's drive to potentially pop in to the hyena den. We had another magical morning there and saw again some really interesting behavior. I think this new cub that's been born into the clan could well be a future queen, and it's causing a lot of interesting behavior between clan members. There seems to be an increase in excitement and agitation between the various clan members, and we're going to look forward to trying to piece together this complex puzzle that is the hierarchy of the hyena clan, and also simply enjoy viewing some great behavior and some very cute little cub action. Australia's a beautiful, beautiful tree that Andrew's showing you, called a torchwood tree. And I've spent a lot of time looking at this tree because Brian, the other cameraman, and myself once broke down here for 3 hours. There's a nest in the main big fork in this tree, and it's the nest of a pair of African harrier hawks. They are no longer using it, and we had parked here in the hope that we'd get a glimpse of them coming in and out of this nest, but we broke down and they didn't come anywhere near us. So, some interesting memories of this tree. But from this beautiful tree, we're going to send you back to Brent's, and we'll catch up with you around the next corner.
Welcome back, everyone. Apparently that little bird caused quite a little confusion. That's good. Got to keep you guys on your toes. It even actually nearly caught me for a second. But there's a very specific diagnostic that actually gave it away at the end. And I believe someone actually got it right. So it was a grey tit flycatcher. And the one it's most easily confused with, if you see very distinct white around the eye, and very well done to Joan, in England. You got that right. But the real big diagnostic, because if we'll get to that now, if we have a look at the other flycatcher, which we do see quite often around here, is the ashy or blue-grey flycatcher. And it has an all-grail tail, even though it has that very similar, not quite the same, facial markings. It is the white outer tail feathers is what gives it away as a grey tit flycatcher. So very, very well done to Joan in England. What got me was all the name changing. I used to know it as a lead-coloured flycatcher. And so Joan and Phoebe got it correct. So very well done, guys. Not an easy bird and not a great view. So we've obviously got some serious twitches out there. So we'll continue on. Maybe we can try find a bird that's going to stump everyone. Isn't that beautiful late afternoon light popping through? Nice little redwood forest ahead of us. So as forest is a strong word, there's about 8. We're just going to fly down the southern boundary quickly and then get back up onto the crests, checking the boundary for any possible movement of leopard during the day. It feels like we haven't seen a leopard for quite a while. We're just going to check tracks on this road. Quite a lot of movement of leopard up and down in this area. Wind picking up. You can actually see the guarri bushes starting to shake. So we'll make our way back up to the eastern boundary, which is also another sort of big crossing point for animals. And then we're going to make our way towards Guarri Pan Road. I just had a chat to Aubrey, who's one of the guides from Djuma, while you guys were with Scotty, and he had leopard tracks that went down there and then went off the road. So we're going to go have another look in that area, and hopefully we get some luck. There's no tracks of it coming out from the opposite side, so there's a strong possibility, especially with that quite dark and windy nights we've been having, that maybe something, leopards caught something in that block, and no one has just been deep enough in to find it yet. So we will definitely give that area a try before heading back to those very fat cats. Not strange weather, but funny weather we're having at the moment. It's hot, then it's cold, and every time the sun disappears behind the clouds, I think, oh, I should put my jersey on. And then the next moment the sun comes out and it's nice and toasty again. And the same, I keep finding myself putting my hat on and off all afternoon today. We have a very, very cool birding question from Sarah, who is 17 in Ohio. Welcome on the safari, Sarah. That is a very, very, very good question. She has asked, does Africa have peacocks? Well, on my book, Birds of Africa, on the front cover is a peacock, and it's called a Congo peacock. And I'm going to get you to the right page now and show you a bit more. It is one of the more recently discovered bird species. Just give me 2 seconds and I should find it, being the only peacocks in the book. So it was actually discovered quite recently, and it lives in possibly one of the most impenetrable parts of Africa, and probably one of the birds that is highest up on a serious birder's wish list is to see a Congo peacock. And for some reason I can't seem to find the Congo peacock in the book. It's that rare. It's so difficult to find it in the book. It's so difficult to find in real life, but it's even difficult to find in the book. I'm just gonna go back to the beginning and start where I should have, with the index. It's not one of the birds I look at often, so I don't know where it's hidden in the book. It's hidden with the guinea fowl. So there it is, a Congo peacock. And strangely enough, I even have a recording of its call here, because of spending some time in that part of the world. I have not seen it yet. And there it is, there's the male and the female. It was only discovered in the sort of 50s. So one of the more recently discovered of the sort of large bird species in Africa, and it is definitely one of the birds high on my list, and they have a very strange call, which I'm playing now. So it's not something you would expect. Very, very strange. And if we have a look at the distribution map off over here, so that is probably one of the least explored areas of Africa, right in the center of DRC. The very few people there, and the people that do live there are very much sort of almost living in the same state as they were 100 years ago. There's no roads, there's very little access. There's 1 or 2 runways built by missionaries in that area, and there's no cars. And most movement around there is all done by boat or by sort of dugout canoes. And even then, if you take the Congo River up to the tributaries to get in that area, you got to watch out for things like river pirates. Strangely enough, but there are river pirates still operating on the Congo River. So probably one of the most inaccessible places to get to in Africa. And also, strange enough, the home of the bonobo. So 2 of Africa's sort of really, really interesting species live in that area. And I actually know a few people who worked on that bonobo project, and they actually used to see Congo peacocks regularly, and they didn't even know it was such a big deal, because primatologists are very one species focused, and they were just all about watching bonobos, and they didn't even realize they were so lucky they used to see them on a weekly basis. They're one of the rarest birds in the world. But thanks very much for that, Sarah. What a great question, and not something you get to talk about too often, peacocks in Africa. It almost sounds ridiculous. we answer quite a few questions on these safaris. So now there's a question on a question, which is quite interesting. So James from Kansas City is just wondering, when we're sitting in a sighting and you've got vehicles from the other properties, and the questions that the guests who are actually there are asking, how do they stack up compared to the questions that you guys who are watching us all around the world ask? Well, James, they are a little bit different. You guys definitely, and it always depends on the guests, but you guys generally seem to go a little bit more in depth. And that's because you must remember, a lot of these people are only out for 4 days. So they do their 4 days, they'll cover the basics, lion, leopard questions, elephant questions and whatnot. Where there's one thing that's incredible about being able to go out almost on safari every day with us is that you guys start looking a little bit further and a little bit in depth. And we'll start trying to push you a little bit further and in depth, and specifically into like areas that we might find really interesting. So I mean, your average safari guest isn't going to start building a bird list, but yet for you guys it's a really incredible thing. You can actually, over the weeks and months that we're out in the bush, you can build a bird list, you can build a tree list, you can even build a hoho list. And if those of you who are new might not know what a hoho is, it's a sort of a South African colloquialism for a bug. So there is so much more, and because you guys are quite often with us more than a couple of days at a time. Oh, striped donkey. Oh, best. How's that, Brian? Or forward a bit? Little window there. So generally it is different, and obviously quite a lot of the questions are the same, but we do seem to get a level of questions that are far more in-depth here than we would on a normal safari. And there we go. I just managed to spot that striped donkey through the bush. I wonder if that was one of the ones who was running with the buffalo. We're not that far from where the lions are on that buffalo kill. So we're on the eastern boundary at the moment, and we're going to continue on. I'm not going to try off-road to get closer. I think with this strong wind that's around, it might scare that zebra, but as we pan out, you can see how well that camouflage works. So that striped animal sort of disappears. That black and white doesn't become as apparent. You can just see his tail swishing there. Okay, so we're going to continue on, leave the zebras to themselves. There's a few more behind that one, but I think if we tried to get a bit closer with a strong wind, it would just cause them to gallop off. Sticking with our feathered friends, Judith from North Carolina is wondering, do we see any martial eagle owls in the area? Judith, unfortunately not. If we did, we would have found a new species. Ah, look who has possibly found the lion carcass, another one of the birds. You just get forward a bit. So it's taken them a while, but that looks like there's two hooded vultures now circling above where the lion carcass is. So the hooded vultures are the smallest of the vulture species we get in this area. And hopefully they will drop down. What happens quite often with all the vulture species is that when the lions are on the ground, they would, when the lions are on the ground, they would stay in the trees. They wouldn't land onto the ground. A hooded might, because they've got a slightly different strategy to the bigger vultures, and they have a much more slightly built than the other vultures, so they tend to pick up tiny little scraps, and sometimes the predators ignore them a bit more than the bigger vultures. But lions are very protective over their kills, even vultures. I've actually seen a lioness catch and grab a vulture out of the air and kill it, but not eat it. Quite ironic, we have the biggest and the smallest vultures next to each other here. So there's the hooded vulture, and you see it's got a very, very slightly built beak. You actually often find them eating lion feces and leopard feces, as well as wild dog feces. They have been known to hang around wild dog dens. And then just below we've got the lappet-faced vulture. You can see massive beak in comparison, also a lot bigger. Hooded vultures can get to about 75 centimeters, whereas a lappet face goes to 115 centimeters. But I think hopefully tomorrow that if the hooded vultures have spotted and they land on the trees around there, a lot of other vultures, your whitebacks, and hopefully some of these great big lappet-faced and even possibly a Cape vulture will come down and join. The Cape vulture, the biggest, second biggest out of the vulture species we get here. Not quite as big as the lappet-faced, but they are quite rare, and they only nest in cliffs. So they can often feed on carcasses that are hundreds of kilometers from where they nest. So they'll spend a day or two feeding on the carcass before flying back to their nests, which can be 100 kilometers. The closest breeding colony of Cape vultures in this area is probably about, it's not too far, it's probably about 60 kilometers in the Drakensberg Mountains. But so hopefully as we watch that sort of carcass disappear, we will get to see some great vulture action around there. And back to Judith's question, while we've got the book on the predatory birds, Judith was asking about a martial eagle owl. I think you might have been referring to a martial eagle, and that is the biggest eagle species we get in the area. And there we go. And they are incredibly massive. We do see them from time to time, not as often as I would like. They are the apex predator of the sky, and they've got a wingspan that's over 2 meters. Number 4, there we go. And there they are. Very, very pretty birds as well. Very striking. And then we do get various eagle owls here, from the giant eagle owl, which is also known as the Verreaux's eagle owl, and to the Cape eagle owl. But I think we'll save those for after dark. So we're traveling down a nice straight cut line. We're going to cross here over to another straight cut line with slightly a better view.
Welcome to the northern boundary of Djuma. We're actually not too far away from Brent as the crow flies. And isn't this a spectacular afternoon? A few rays of sunlight bursting through the clouds. All that's missing now is a leopard in the tree in the foreground. So Andrew and I have been scanning the marula trees in the hope that we could see the telltale sign of a vertical tail hanging down, or the 4 legs dangling again vertically down. That's what you want to look for when looking for leopards up in trees. And this is the time of year to spot them up there. The reason being is that a lot of the trees have lost all of their leaves, and more importantly, the marula trees, which is one of their most comfortable trees. And as we drive along, we will try and point out some of these marula trees. Basically, though, they've got very horizontal branches which allow for comfortable perches for leopards to not only sleep and relax, but also hoist their kills and dangle their kills up there. So one of these days we are going to spot a leopard, and you can spot them from just about half a mile away, from a very, very long distance, provided the tree is silhouetted and so is the leopard. It's going to happen one of these days, and I can't wait to share that moment with you. And to be honest, it's a little bit overdue, because none of us, barring James with VM the other day, they did a good one, but it was quite close to the road. We want to spot one that's far off in the distance and then wiggle our way through the bush to take you closer by. So amongst many things to look forward to on Safari Live, that is certainly one of them. Now we are about to dip down into a bit of a low-lying area where we may intermittently lose signal, but don't worry, we'll pop up the other side and it should rectify itself. And it's not every day it does this. It's quite an intricate system, and some days the signal is better than others. So let's wait and see. We are slowly going to meander our way towards the hyena den site and see if there's any signs of action there. It's getting to the right stage of the evening, but sometimes you may arrive and it is not active. I think it is worth a gamble though, because we have been having such incredible viewing there over the last few weeks.